Six
or more.
members.
And I started the recording.
Excellent. So this is the CAC, Community Advisory Committee. This is October 28th meeting, and we are going to call the informational meeting to order. I'll start with the public involvement announcement. So welcome to AMAT's Community Advisory Committee meeting. Public comments are welcome and encouraged, with 3 minutes given to each speaker. After committee discusses each item, members of the public will be invited to comment. Housekeeping items for virtual attendees: please keep your cameras off unless speaking. For those attending by phone, please press *6 to mute or unmute yourself. So next item is approval of the agenda, but we can't approve the agenda. Is there, moving down, we can't approve the minutes. So we'll go straight to item 5, action items. Letter to AMAT's Policy Committee in support of BPAC letter on Vision Zero Task Force. So context, SJ had sent in a request to put something on the agenda. It sounds like the BPAC had submitted a letter to the Policy Committee. The Policy Committee wanted additional information and sent it back to the Bike and Pedestrian AMAT Subcommittee. And SJ wanted we had an actionable item to potentially have a resolution, thank you, Christine, stating that this was a time-sensitive issue and we wanted the Policy Committee to have, to support that, not to send it back. So that was just a summing up of the general context right there. And so we'll open it up to the floor.
Seeing as this is my first informational meeting, you know, it looks like the things under action items are things that we were intending or planning to take action on. So in the absence of quorum, does that mean that all of these things get pushed to our next agenda, or will
we can't take any action. These are totally discussion. So normally outside of this forum, we couldn't talk without having violating the Open Meeting Act. But because this meeting was noticed, we can still discuss these items. We just can't take any official action.
Gotcha. Yeah. So it's okay for me to say, when I read this letter, I was really appreciative that it came together and that we have the opportunity to stand alongside the BPAC in this scenario. I mean, I think the instances of pedestrian deaths increase this time of year. And so it feels really timely that we're taking up this issue, and it's disappointing to see that come back.
Chuck?
There. Okay. Yeah, I guess let's kind of take a different view. The committee that wrote the letter is, you know, very focused on pedestrian bicycles, where the Policy Committee is looking at the entire AMAT's plan as a whole and the transportation plan. And I think prioritizing the the bicycle and pedestrians and not looking at the entire program kind of undercuts. And so I do not support the endorsing their letter. And I think we need to stay focused on, you know, the AMATs following the agreement with the federal government that transportation modes will be in a manner which will efficiently maximize mobility of people and goods within and through an urbanized area, and minimize transportation related fuel consumption and air pollution. And by reducing these roads, reducing speed limits, actually is going to have the opposite effect of that. It's going to create congestion. And I think you know, there's other things, I guess, basically, you know, their item, you know, 3 of their letter, though, increase enforcement of traffic violations. along identified corridors. I definitely agree with that. And I think there's a real lack of enforcement, especially with the, you know, in the panhandlers out in the streets. And there needs to be more enforcement of our traffic laws, both for the drivers and for the pedestrians that are standing in the medians and in the roadways creating traffic hazards. So that's my comments on it. Thank you.
Thank you. And just we're going to pause for a second because I saw somebody else jump on right there. I can't see. Could you identify yourself? Starting with a 1-8. And if you're uncomfortable speaking, there was no offense meant to that. I just more wanted to establish if this is a committee member and we have quorum. Nancy, your speaker's not working?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, you can hear me. What I can't do is I can't enlarge whatever's on the screen. So I am going to sign off and sign back on. I was trying to use a split screen on an iPad in a hotel room and it's too much. So I'm just going to sign off and sign back on.
Sounds good. Seen a few.
Yeah.
And just before we, the phone number that just joined on here, if you can hear me and you are a CAC member, if you would say what CAC member you are and identifier so we can establish that quorum, be great. If you're a member of the public, that's great too. Just wanted to reach out one more time in case it was a member here and we can't hear you currently. Okay, Bob, you had your hand raised?
Sure. The comment I have on this one is that the steps which were, I guess, the policy committee included all of these different actions as part of their efforts to reduce pedestrian fatalities and everything. And I think they really, the suggestion of the bicycle pedestrian committee was really to help prioritize some of those actions and just say that really that the actions that had been suggested by the policy committee are not actually being implemented right now. I hear, public service announcements on the radio saying, hey, here's how you could reduce fatalities by, looking both ways at intersections and things like that. But I question whether or not actions like that are going to actually affect any of the pedestrian deaths compared to things which are shown to be able to reduce the pedestrian and fatalities and injuries, things like reducing the speeds. So I would support this, a letter regarding the Vision Zero.
Perfect. Thank you, Bob. Is there any other member wishing to speak?
Yes, this is Nancy. I would also support having the policy committee take this letter and apply this letter, or I guess I should say I would supporting this letter. This is in keeping with our municipally adopted long-range transportation strategy, which puts safety as a priority. And I just can't see any universe in which it's more important to get there a couple seconds faster at the price of somebody's life. And we do have an alarming rash of accidents, and it's not acceptable. And to me, it's not acceptable according to the policies our municipalities adopted.
Thank you, Nancy. And so I wrote a statement too on this one. I think I took a little bit more different of attack on this one. More for me was a procedural process, but while I share the goal of improving roadway safety, I don't believe it's appropriate for the CAC to send this letter to the policy committee. The policy committee's decision to return the BPAC Vision Zero action letter for further consideration as part of the normal review and deliberation process. As an advisory body, our role is to provide constructive feedback, facilitate communication among AMAT's committees, not to second guess or publicly challenge the policy committee's procedural decision. If the intent is to advance the goal of Vision Zero, I think our efforts would be better focused on helping refine actionable recommendations and supporting collaboration between the committees, rather than taking a position that could be perceived as confrontational. So I don't support the letter, but not because of what the positions in the letter is. I think the policy committee kicked it back, and for us to second guess that, I think is slightly out of line. But that's just my take. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Matt. I think that's a really interesting and nuanced perspective. And I always like when we're able to take an issue and kind of peel apart its layers from being I think the theme or the focus of the conversation, but then also being respectful of the work that we're doing as a part of AMATS as a system. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, Allie.
This is Nancy. I agree. I thank you for that perspective, and I would rather be constructive than adversarial for sure.
I think they're all good points that they're trying to make. Just how they go about it, I think it'd be better if we took a position on something versus trying to tag on to another committee. But anyways. Okay, so that was, do we have any other member wishing to speak before I open it to the public? Hearing no other member wishing to speak, I would open it up. Are there any members of the public wishing to comment on 5A action item, letter to AMAT's policy committee in support of BPAC letter on Vision Zero task force? Not hearing any, we'll move to 5B, public process for the 4-year funding program tip. Pass this to, I'm assuming, Christine or Aaron.
Nancy, Member Pease
I know
asked for
that.
this item to be on the agenda, so she could speak to it, and we will back up as needed.
Perfect. Nancy, you have the floor.
Yes, I'll frame it. My concern is this, or my interest in learning more about the process is this. With the 4-year tip, that's where the money meets the road or the money meets the ground. And though, as I understand it, there's a draft that works its way through several policy committees or work sessions, and then the policy committee approves a draft. It's not a public review draft, and that goes to agencies for various reviews, and it also goes to for some conformity determination, air quality conformity. So there's a lot of staff time going into it. Then, if I understand correctly, and I want Christine to tell me where I might have missed any steps, but my understanding is after it gets agency approvals and some kind of conformity determination, then it goes out to the public for a public review draft. And my concern is at that point, there's so much time invested in the project mix. It's kind of a puzzle that's all the pieces come together to meet the fiscally constraints and to meet the air quality constraints. And it seems to me that there is then a real reluctance or maybe even an unlikelihood that any major project, maybe even minor project, can be added, revised, or subtracted. Because what I've heard in the past is then we'd have to send it back for conformity and possibly these other agency reviews. And so I'm wondering if the public is to have a meaningful chance of giving informed advice and influencing the outcome, where should that public input take place? When should it take place? So that we're not running the agencies through everything, twice and being inefficient. But please tell me if I got that right or not.
Yeah, I'll say a couple of things and then I think Aaron is on and he'll probably want to elaborate. But I just threw up the approval timeline for the tip. We kind of have started making these graphics just kind of to walk through the process. And I would say, we had 2 committee work sessions on this draft, and both of those are open to the public. And then the October meetings when we're discussing whether to release it or not. Those are also meetings that are open to the public. So in this timeline, I would suggest that those would be opportunities to weigh in, or at least if you couldn't attend the meetings, listen to the recording and reach out with any comments or suggestions that you would have. But Aaron will probably want to elaborate more.
Yeah, hi, everybody. So I'll clarify, the effort that has to take place next in November, December is not agency approval. It is just for the interagency consultation process and air quality conformity demonstration. Those are federal requirements that we have to do as an MPO that have limited maintenance areas or a limited maintenance area within our boundary. So that's not an approval. That's just saying, are these projects going to impact our ability to implement our air quality control measures or not? And it's only for projects that are really out in the Eagle River area, because that's where our limited maintenance area is, but it covers the entire tip. So they have to take a look at every project. The prime opportunity for the public to comment is when it goes out for public comment starting in January. Changes can be made at that point by anybody, by the committee members, based on public feedback. And there is a process that we have to go through based on any of those changes that are made. And so that's just kind of how it's spelled out in federal regulations for us about that process. In terms of, can the public comment earlier? Yes, they can comment as it's being worked on during the work sessions, as Christine said. Also at the October meeting, that is an opportunity to comment on it as well, or provide feedback on it as well. Yeah, I can answer any more questions you have.
So Aaron, this is an awesome graphic. I don't know if you or Christine made this, very helpful. Nice job. Where is in this process, if we were going to have CAC comments, would those spots line up? Where in this would there be opportunities for the CAC to give input?
It'll be during the public comment period in January, February. We'll be bringing it to the CAC as required in our operating agreement, to bring it to you for review and comment.
And just remind me, what month was that? That was the
January, February.
perfect. Thank
That's
you.
the number 5 on the list in front of you.
We'll just
And
want
you
to
know,
be sure that our first quarter meeting
Yeah.
kind of lands in a place that gives us a chance to do it. And this is super helpful to know that we should be plugged into those work sessions this fall. I know that September one has already happened, but has the October one happened?
Yes, they've all happened.
Okay, cool. Then I'll go watch the recordings.
Very good.
Through the chair, could I have a
Go
follow-up
for it.
question? This
Yeah,
is Nick. Okay, two questions. First a comment and then a question, actually. So I didn't make the work sessions. I was not available, but I did attend the October meeting on behalf of my community council. And I was at the beginning, early on in the meeting, the chair of the meeting said, "I doubt we're going to make any changes." So, so that's where I was feeling, gosh, this process is already locked in. And my community council did want me to comment because a project important to our area had been put out to the illustrative list, which means after 2030. So I was a little bit like it. So it didn't seem as if that was a very influential meeting for me to take my community council's concerns. So that's the comment. And then the next question is to Aaron, either at that meeting or at the January, February public review period, what additional work does that create for staff and for the other agencies which is the more effective or efficient place for community councils or interest groups to say, hey, we'd really like to make a kind of major refinement on this project or add something or delete something. Where are you best able to accommodate that kind of proposal?
Well, first I'll say the comment that was made by the chair was not related to the tip. It was related to the operating agreement and boundary. That was part of the discussion they were having at the beginning of the meeting. They weren't talking that we won't be making substantial changes to the tip. In fact, policy committee members at that meeting made some changes to the tip, and there are probably going to be more changes to the tip based on public feedback. So
Okay, I apologize. Thank you.
just want to clarify there. And
Okay.
your guys' opportunity to make meaningful changes is during the public comment period. That is why it is there for you. If it creates more staff time work, that's what part of the process is. The reality is the most impactful thing to be involved with by the community is the MTP, because that is what we draw projects from. So, you know, I want people to understand it's important to be involved in the tip and to get your voices heard and make sure that these are the right projects that we're funding with it. But the MTP is more important for people to be involved to make sure the projects that are in the MTP are the correct ones for the community. So if I had to make a recommendation for you guys for public engagement and involvement to where you should put the most amount of time and effort, it's the MTP development.
If I could follow up with the chair.
Sure. Go for it.
In the past, the MTP has had more projects that can be funded, and so I guess from another perspective, it's when the money gets actually assigned and spent that there's a real change. So it does seem to me that projects, are added and subtracted from the MTP. But anyway, it seems from a more, I guess, a layperson's perspective, it's when are you going to actually do it that it seems like people want to, that's what they want to know. When's it going to happen? Because, the project that my community council is interested in, it's been, money's already been spent on it, but all of a sudden it won't be built for 5 more years. So it's been in the MTP for a while, but my community council wants to know, well, when's it going to be built? So.
Well, that's kind of the reality we live in, that there is limited funding available. These projects get really expensive, and there are a lot of things that need to be done, and there's only a few people who are actually funding them. And I will say, no, the MTP does not have more projects than it can afford. That is part of the MTP process where we have to be fiscally constrained. So
Okay,
you may
you
may disagree with that, but we have a requirement to be fiscally constrained for the MTP.
Okay.
So Aaron, the one question, you put a great point of focusing on the MTP, and I really appreciate that. And so good for all the committee members here that we're getting a lot of roots with community councils. And so talking about nomination period. So I know I've heard different, I know it can't be necessarily added, but can a community council nominate a project at any time or only in a specific nomination period?
So they can nominate a project at any time. We very rarely add or remove projects from the MTP. In my time working at DOT and the AMATs, I think they had one amendment before I got here, and now we've done maybe one. We're going to do a second one. So in my time with AMATs and DOT, there's been 3 amendments to the MTP. We very rarely ever add or delete projects from it because we update it every 4 years. Projects can be added and removed at any time. The big thing to remember is if you're asking for a project to be added to the MTP, it's fiscally constrained. So what project is going to be moved out, or what additional funding are you going to bring to bear that we need to account for as part of the MTP?
Chuck?
So, I'm on the website, and I brought up the AMATS funding program that Aaron, that you just completed. It looks like a few days ago, and for the tip. So the public comment process will be to comment on the projects that you have listed on this on the website there?
No, we don't have a draft. We don't have a version of it out for the public at this point because we are still doing the internal work. So in January, we will send out a notice to everybody to let them know that there is a document for them to review. We have the presentation that's there, if you're interested in reviewing the presentation, but the final version that was approved for release for the policy committee is not out for public review at this point.
So this is a draft that's on the website.
I'm not sure which one you are pointing to.
Well, it says AMAT's funding program, dated October 22nd, 2025, and why a new tip, and then the 2023 to 2026 tip is nearing completion.
Are you talking about the memo that we had at the TAC policy committee?
Well, I found this right next to what's on the screen right now that's being shared, the approval timeline. And then right below that, there's a draft project list presentation. Yeah, yes,
Yeah.
that's that document.
That was the presentation that we gave to the assembly to give them a heads up of what is coming, because we have to come to the assembly for a public hearing in January, February. So what you see before you is just a presentation that we put together that kind of give you a heads up of what is being added and why and everything like that. But the actual tip document itself is not available for public review at this time.
Okay. That yeah, answered my question there. Thank you.
I had one more question for you, Aaron. So you brought up a really good point of everything's fiscally constrained. So if you're putting something in, what are you pushing out? Or what funding are you bringing in? That's what I was going to ask, is if there's local funding, what are there any options for local funding?
What do you mean, like funding a project? Can you give an example of what you mean?
Sure. Like, let's say there's different road board districts, either LURSA or SBURSA, that collect CIP mill, and they use that CIP for their own funding program. Is there any path of potentially using CIP that would benefit? Could there be like a match, or is there any type of benefit of coming to AMATS to bring funding outside of what's existing right there? And I know that's kind of loose. Just I think I'm so used to these are the funding sources and that's it. And I never really hear the conversation of what about potentially an outside funding source coming in, and is there any benefit at all?
So there's a lot that you asked there. Let me see if I can make sure I get everything. So we have all of our funding sources identified because we're federally funded. So if you're wanting to bring additional money towards the federal funding to help keeping like a project moving forward, yeah, there's benefit to it. Typically, that's not done because of the cost. All of these federal projects are so expensive that there is not often a lot of local money, especially from LURSAs or anything like that, that have limited resources or limited capabilities to raise it. Because, we're talking millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars for projects. Often what we do get from the local side is the match required for the federal funding. And so that's already been accounted for or will be accounted for the project. In the MTP, we're required to account for all of our different funding sources. We've accounted for the local stuff, the state federal stuff, the AMATS federal, everything like that. We account for it as part of the MTP. If we want to add a new funding source or a new revenue stream, and be like, oh, we bring 10 million more a year and we're going to put these projects in that'll be funded by it. That revenue source has to have a reasonable assumption of being available and expected. A good example of that is back in the day, the state legislature decided they wanted to start looking at a transportation fund, that they were going to put money towards a transportation fund. And then they were just going to use the interest out of that pot of money to pay for transportation. They actually had legislation moving forward, and we as AMATs could sit there and be like, okay, this is a reasonable thing to look at and assume it could be available for future use. If you're talking about, we're going to go out and try and get some money from, a private entity or something like that, that's not necessarily a reasonable assumption that that'll be available, because we've never had that available before. So we have to be really careful what we put in there and not over program projects and basically get to the point where Nancy's saying that we have more projects than we can reasonably fund in our MTP. That's why we as staff have taken a much harder look at some of these large scale projects, like the Safer Seward Highway project. That's reminiscent of, the Kinnick Crossing project in terms of its cost and impact. And so we want to make sure that we're reasonable in our assumptions of what we're bringing forward for revenue.
No, thank you. Good answer. Nancy, did you have anything else, or was it just not muted?
Yes, through the chair. I just wanted to say I'm actually pretty enthused about this latest funding program. So I don't want to come across as being confrontational or anything like that. I'm trying to just figure out, not just for my community council, but for the other community councils in my end of town that don't tend to send in comments at all, how to reach out, or when I reach out to them, which I'm going to do in the next couple months, to say, hey, you haven't been commenting, but you really should. I just want to make sure I understand the process well enough to know, when they should be commenting, and then to give them realistic expectations. So, if the projects have already been in the past TIP or past MTP, and that makes it easy for them to say, hey, this is a real priority for our community. But I know that at least with my council, we have projects that we identify in the municipal CIP, and a lot of those are smaller. And I just don't know if any of those have any chance of getting into the MTP. So I'm just trying to figure out how to try to generate more participation from the community councils in my area. And I don't know if any of the other community representatives could get in touch with me and tell me what they do, or if it's a short, if you can tell me in brief now, that's great. But I want to reach out to other community councils. And again, Aaron, I'm pretty excited about some of the projects in this funding program. So don't get me wrong on that.
No, this is exactly the kind of conversations we need to have on this. I'll let you know from our end as staff, we're a little frustrated by things, because here's a good thing. Or here's what we found out recently from the Federal Highway Administration. When we do amendments to the TIP or the MTP, we get it ready, we get it out for public comment, we receive public comment. If we make changes to that amendment that meet an amendment level threshold, so for example, we put the amendment out and somebody says, we want to add this new project in because of safety concerns. Well, that's an amendment level change. If the policy committee agrees to do that, we have to put that back out for public comment for 30 days. So it puts us in kind of a weird, awkward bind of what we're supposed to be doing and what kind of changes we could be making. It's very strange. And so we're trying to find what are good avenues to get people the information early enough so they can start getting their comments together. And that's why that presentation that we put together for the assembly is hopefully helpful for everybody. And we want to make it available to everybody so you can see, okay, here are some of the new projects. We don't have the complete information yet, but we know something's coming with these projects that are new, these projects that can't make it forward. Let's start getting our comments ready now through the process and ready for when the January timeframe hits. It's something that we're kind of iterating on. So I think your feedback, the other committee members' feedback is valuable for us. And although we may not be able to make an immediate change for you and others, I think it's important in the long run to hear this kind of stuff from the community.
Thank you, Aaron. And just to keep things going, oh, Nancy, got something else?
Oh, no, I think I just took my hand down. I meant to just take my hand down.
Your hand was down, you raised it back up, but that's good.
Okay. All right. I meant to take it down.
Okay. Do we have any other member wishing to comment? If not, opening it up to the public. Are there any members of the public wishing to discuss or ask questions about the public process for 4-year funding program, the TIP, Transportation Improvement Program? Hearing none, we'll move to 5C, Transit Supportive Development Overlay, AMATS Modeling and Data. Nancy, was this? I think this was a request of yours, or?
Yes, and this was generated partly, and I hope I'm quoting more accurately this time, but at that October Policy Committee meeting, Aaron, you can correct me if I'm misquoting you, but I think I heard Aaron say, you know, we need land use information. We rely on land use information to help us direct our investments in transportation. Is that reasonably accurate?
It was at the TAC meeting, yes. We didn't get
Okay,
to
the
this item at the
TAC.
policy committee. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, thank you. See, I didn't get it quite right that time, but
That's
I got the
okay.
content right. So I'm also, with my background as a land use planner, I'm always looking for better integration of land use planning and transportation planning. And I've been asking through the various comments on TSDO. Everyone here knows what TSDO is, or should I briefly say what that is?
Briefly.
We were briefed on it at our last meeting.
Oh, that's right. We were. Okay. So anyway, with the TSDO, the standard or the target, or the impetus is to bring up neighborhood areas to 36 dwelling units per acre on the average. So you got to have some really dense pockets because you're going to have some, commercial and anyway, you got to have some really dense infill to do that. And I've been asking, so how realistic is that given that our TSDO boundary is so big? Are we really concentrating things enough? And to answer that question, you need to do some math. And basically, you need to look at how many housing units you think you can add. And then you need to look at the geographical locations where you think you can add them. And then see in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, how dense can you really get? And it turns out I have seen none of this modeling for the TSDO process, although our community council and others have been asking. But it does exist in the map here that you see, which is the Land 2040 Land Use Plan Atlas. And this is potential gross housing densities. And the way that the planning staff did this is they assumed 21,000 new units of housing over, I guess it was like about a 25-year period, starting from 2015 to 2040. That translates to 840 units per year, but we've fallen behind that. And under current policies, you can see the darkest brown is where you get to 36 DUA by 2040. And it's these tiny little, you have to look really close. There's one on Tudor, and then there are a couple there on Northern Lights area, and there's one up by 15th. But they're really micro zones. They can get to 36 DUA. So how does that compare to the mayor's aspiration of 1,000 units per year? Well, it's probably about the same number of housing units because, as I said, we've fallen behind on our 840 units per year that this plan wanted to do. So 1,000 units per year might catch us up. So you have the same problem. By 2040, you have not come close to filling in, except in these tiny little areas. And those numbers are how many DUA, residential DUA, gross DUA you would have. So you can see a lot of the areas, even in Midtown, are pretty low density. So I would like the municipality to provide more of this information on the TSDO and provide it to AMATS, because if we can't fill in along, this whole TSDO area, all the transit corridors, then maybe we should be targeting more closely certain of the corridors or certain neighborhood commercial centers. And then AMATS would know, yes, that is where we need to do the road diet first. And that is where we need to go into that older neighborhood that doesn't even have sidewalks so that pedestrians can walk that first and last quarter mile to the transit stop. So this is what I would like to see. So I'd like to hear from Aaron if they have received any of this and maybe the public just hasn't. Or do you do any of it within AMATS? And could you do any of it within AMATS?
Go ahead, Aaron.
So right now TSDO is paused at the municipality of Anchorage. So no, we have not received anything from them, and I don't know if or when we will. We do look at the land use information as part of our MTP development, you know, what the density is expected to be. And that's kind of why I was making my comments at the TAC about this, is that TSDO is vitally important for what we do for a lot of the reasons that you mentioned, Nancy. So now in terms of, is this something we can do at AMATS? Yeah, I think an MPO can do it. However, we don't really have the resources or availability at this time to do it in AMATS. We're pretty focused on keeping things going as they are. We have a lot of base things that we have to work on a regular basis that we're trying to just get up on a routine update cycle. You know, our MTP, our TIP, our UPWP, our safety plan, our non-motorized plan, you know, our complete streets plan, all that kind of stuff that we already have. So to add another thing on top of that is a challenge right now. It's not a no, we can't ever do it. It's just we may need to wait a year or so before we can get started on that, just to meet our schedule of what we have available staff-wise.
Thank you, Aaron. Allie?
Thank you. Yeah. I guess for my part, I am interested in the transportation professionals' analysis of TSDO and potential impacts. And so I think as this public process unfolds, I'll be really interested to see what kind of analyses move forward. I think for the conversation here today, I guess my question for Nancy is if you foresee the CAC taking up a resolution, taking a position on the proposal, or do you want to use this space as an opportunity to like ask those technical questions? And I guess it could be a yes and.
Yeah, it is a yes and. I've had some conversations with the people in the municipal planning staff, and I'm led to believe that there are several people there who could do this kind of modeling, so it wouldn't necessarily need to be coming from AMATS. But I just wanted to find out, is AMATS using just this map? Because it seems like this map doesn't necessarily point to any corridors becoming transit supportive, and it doesn't show how we could, concentrate growth even more and make some real walkable neighborhoods. And I'm really encouraged by the latest funding program because it does have a bunch of corridor studies like, Muldoon and ANC and INL and Fireweed and Northern Lights, and I'm probably forgetting some. But if they're not all going to, I mean, look at this map. Can we tell from this map, which one of them is most likely with a little policy boost to actually become transit supportive? I don't think we have that data. And I really want TSDO to succeed. I would really love to have some transit supportive neighborhoods and corridors. But I just don't think we're getting the data to say, yep, we're actually going to throw everything at ANC Street or whatever, Muldoon. We're going to throw it all at Muldoon because we got a transit center going in there. And then we're going to do, sidewalks, and we're going to do a lot of safety features. And that one is really going to come online.
And just a reminder to raise your hand if you do want to comment. And nothing against Allie, I'll let you speak right there. I just, to prevent it as a back and forth conversation right there, if you'd raise your hand. Aaron, go ahead.
Sure, yeah.
I just wanted to comment. So as part of what we do with the MTP, we look at this document, part of what you have here in front of you, everybody, but we also look at the action plan that's in the 2040 land use plan, which designates the transit supportive development corridors, or the overlay, or the transit supportive development corridors that they have identified. They have like 8 corridors that are identified. So I think it's like Tudor and Lake Otis, and then there's also the Academy Vanguard Drive, 92nd Avenue thing. So we use those to make a determination. One of the things we found with our last MTP update is that the 2040 land use plan is not enough to get us to making substantial or even any change really to the transportation system for what you see it for today. That the Muni would have to, at least in the Anchorage Bowl, I'm not talking about Chugach Eagle River area, in the Anchorage Bowl, they would have to densify significantly more than what is in the 2040 land use plan. So one of the things I would recommend the Muni do is, one, update their comp plan because it's a little old, and two, update their 2040 land use plan map and take that hard look at what is it going to take to make these things happen. You know, with the fact that TSDO is on pause right now, I'm concerned that I don't know where that's going to head and what that means for us. So at some point, AMATs may have to step in and start saying, here are some of the land use changes that we're recommending for the municipality to make in order to meet these transportation changes that everybody is asking for the Anchorage Bowl area.
Thank you, Aaron. Hallie?
Thanks for that, Aaron. That's really helpful context just about the relationship between land use, density, and transportation demand. I think as it relates to the study, and the only comment that I wanted to make in response to what Nancy was sharing is simply that zoning code doesn't prescribe anything. Zoning code is just describing the envelope in which someone, a property owner, can build on their property. So I also just hesitate to be looking at these particularly dark portions of this map and say, you know, I don't think that we should or ought to make a recommendation that says, oh, it should only be there in the Midtown corridor, you know, around Northern Lights and Minnesota, because that's a property owner, right? And that becomes spot zoning, and that's illegal. And so, you know, I think that there are some other legal considerations and then also just practical considerations about the purpose of zoning code that have to come into play when we're talking about community planning and that relationship between zoning, what gets developed, and the transportation demand in that area.
Thank you, Allie. Do we have any other comments? Not hearing any comments, opening it up. Oh, go ahead, Nancy.
Yes, to the chair, just one final comment in response to Ally. Yeah, I do understand spot zoning, and of course we don't want to do that. I'm just asking that the zoning policies have some demographic projections and sort of some reality checks, because we can zone everything for high density, but if we don't have the numbers to fill it, you know, even half of it to high density, then we're just creating kind of mid-density scatter, and it makes it even harder in some ways to figure out where to put transportation improvements. So more information, more study. I think we are in agreement with this. And as far as Aaron saying, well, AMATs could possibly make recommendations on the LUP, I'm fine. I would like a two-way dialogue. I'd like some iterative analysis, but it's got to be based on, okay, we're going to grow at this rate, so we only have this many units realistically. Where do we put them to align with our transportation investments? So I'm excited to have that conversation, that interdisciplinary conversation, and in the public, with the public, you know, partaking. So can't take any action anyway, but you know, maybe the next time we meet, I can have some more conversations and have something more specific that we could get behind. And if anyone else has any ideas about how we could get behind this, please reach out to me.
Reach out to your assembly member. Well, with that great conversation back and forth, is there anybody else wishing to speak before we open it to the public? Not hearing any other committee member comments, opening it to the public for transit support development overlay, specifically AMAT's modeling and data. Not hearing any comments, we'll move to item 6, projects and plan updates. So move to 6A, high crash injury network map.
I think we have Emily on for that. I'll just pull it up.
Hi,
So
Emily.
if you, just a quick, if you're on our main page, there is a button for the high crash network. Emily?
Thanks. Yeah, I was gonna try to share my screen, but you're already on it, so I appreciate that.
You want me to
Yeah,
pull up
so,
just the map?
actually, if you want to go back to the page you were just on just for a second.
Sure.
Thanks. So we developed this a couple months ago now. From there are kind of 4 sources of information about where the high crash or high injury locations are in Anchorage, or in the AMATS area, I should say. And so it's sometimes kind of confusing to have 4 sources that kind of have a similar purpose, used similar data for the most part, but they don't always agree exactly with each other. So what we did was we just took all those 4 sources, which are listed there on the webpage, and took their maps and overlaid them, just pasted them together to say, okay, this corridor is included in a plan, one of those plans or not. So yeah, then on this page, we have links to an interactive map that I'll ask Christine to click in a second, as well as a PDF version of the map. And then we also provided a table with some data for each of those high crash corridors that tells you kind of what kinds of crashes are there. Are there a lot of pedestrian involved crashes? How long the corridor is, just, kind of some basic data about each corridor. So yeah, now if we can go to that interactive map, because that's probably the most useful thing for most people, or what most people will be interested in. This is hosted on the Muni GIS site, so if you're familiar with this, it may look a little bit familiar. And if not, there's a legend on the right. So we're showing hotspots in red and corridors in orange. The hotspots came directly from the AMAT safety plan, which identified them as locations where there were at least 70 crashes of any kind, of any severity, over a 5-year period. So those are potentially the worst of the worst, keeping in mind that those are all types of crashes and all severities of crashes. So that does include fender benders that we're less worried about from a safety perspective, but could still indicate kind of a pervasive problem at those areas that definitely warrant a closer look to prevent future fatalities potentially. So
Emily,
I think that's, yeah.
Are you taking questions at the end, or are you taking questions as you go in your presentation?
I was just going to wrap up, so questions are welcome. Thanks.
So something caught my eye. I see in Chuqueagle River, we have a hot spot right there. Is that an interchange? What specifically?
Yeah, so that is,
That North Birchwood.
oh, that's the J-Bear
The Fort
interchange,
Ridge
isn't it?
exit.
Ah, Fort Rich exit. Okay, yeah, great
Yeah.
info.
There is one, I think, a little bit farther north. Oh, just a little bit farther north. There it is.
Yeah.
I don't remember which one that is.
That's the yeah.
Oh, that's
Is that
Birchwood.
Fires?
Birchwood Loop.
Oh, it is.
South-
Chuqueague High
South
School, that
Birchwood
on-ramp
Loop.
right there. Yep. South Birchwood Loop. Yeah. Okay, yeah, thank you. Yeah, great map. Oh, there's a couple other ones. All the interchanges right there. Oh, that's great. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna have to investigate. Sorry to take everyone's time. Normally, we don't have quite the data. That's great that it got mapped out in Chuqueagle River too. Thank you.
You don't want to be on that map. You sound excited.
Well, no, it's data. You know, the
I know,
project.
I'm joking.
Yeah. Data's good. We like data.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you know it's a problem, it's nice to be recognized.
With that, are there members of the committees that have questions? Go ahead, Ellie.
How often will this map be updated, and how reliable is it in terms of a marker of how once a change is made to a street or a road, is it something that we can come back to and look at over time?
Yeah, so since this map is pulled from 4 other things, which includes the AMAT safety plan, DOT's Highway Safety Improvement Program, or HSIP, the statewide strategic highway safety plan, and the Vision Zero action plan that the Muni and DOT put together about a year ago. So this map couldn't be directly updated unless all of those were updated based on the workflow we established for this map. But the plan is to revisit this with an update to the AMAT safety plan, which should be kicking off next year to the year after in terms of when work will actually start. And at that time, we're going to take a really good look at, do we want to include, like how many years of data do we want to include? How far back in time do we want to go, seeing as things do change sometimes on the system in terms of road projects and so forth. Also, how do we want to treat injuries and serious injuries and fatalities versus kind of the fender benders, which, as I mentioned, can indicate potential problems, but probably most of us are a lot less worried about fender benders than fatalities. So looking at how we treat those when we identify these high crash or high injury areas. And then, so I think that next safety plan update will be a really good chance to do that. We're intending to update the safety plan in the future every about 4 to 5 years. So that could be, we'll look at what roads have changed in the meantime, look at if there's been any change in crash patterns. Are they still a hot spot or not? And there's also the potential through the Muni Traffic Department. They do their annual traffic safety report, which shows crash patterns and so forth. And they're interested in collaborating on sort of summarizing those data, those crash patterns for these corridors specifically, since we've highlighted them as problematic areas. Now, there are a lot of them on this map, and that's one of the things we want to do in the future is try to focus in more or prioritize kind of what's the worst of the worst and where should we really be targeting safety projects and or data analysis. So yeah, this map itself, I think, is just an interim measure until we get the next safety plan update, but that should be coming in a couple of years.
And just to clarify that, because that kind of tied into a question I have, do we have the ability with this GIS layer to actually look at any of the metric or statistics of the accidents in that location? Or is it just broad spectrum of these are areas that qualify with all these different plans that were identified based off of their metrics?
Yeah, so the map is just a map. It doesn't give you any extra data if you click on it. But the table here, which Christine can click on, is going to show you, and this is only for the corridors, not the hotspots. So the ones in Chugiak, Eagle River were hotspots, which it's harder to summarize for a point location versus kind of a longer corridor that may include more data. So we just did the corridors. But if there is a corridor that you're interested in, you can go to this table and see over the period from 2013 to 2024 is what's shown in this table. Sort of what do the crashes look like there? And then some road characteristics like what is the speed limit? And you can see a lot of these end up with a lot of pedestrian fatalities. So, I mean, that is kind of what we're hoping to target. So does that answer your question, Matt?
It does. No, that's great info. Do we have any other questions? Very nice presentation. Thank you for presenting. Chuck, go ahead. So Chuck, I think you're far enough away from your.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. Okay. Is there for, yeah, it's kind of surprised to see Eklutna on there, but even the Tudor, Muldoon curve, 36 to Patterson, 7, and that is red on the, so, but 7 accidents over a 10-year period. Doesn't seem, so what's the, yeah, I mean, Matt had asked the metrics on what causes it to be red or a high crash corridor.
Yeah, so it does vary again among those 4 data sources that we used. Some of them looked only at pedestrian and bicyclist involved crashes. Some of them included all crashes. Some of them, like the HSIP list, seems to include the whole corridor kind of no matter what. So like the HSIP said, all of Tudor is bad news and all of Muldoon is bad news. And so that is how that curve specifically got into our list. We're showing it separately in the table because it does feel like the curve is kind of a different beast from the rest of Tudor and the rest of Muldoon. But yeah, those are the kinds of questions that I think are really worth looking at with the safety plan update when we have more resources and more time to really drill into some of those details and revisit what's actually qualified in our opinion to be kind of the top priority locations.
Perfect.
Okay,
Do we have any other
thank you.
committee members? With that, do we have any members of the public wishing to comment? Hearing none, we'll move to 6B, AMAT's household travel survey. Christine?
Yeah, and I'll just show another thing on the main page. Just you've heard about this project. I'm just going to show you where it is if you wanted to get more information. But we are doing the household travel survey. Surveys have been going out to randomly selected households. We have sent out over 78,000. We've had 754 as of this morning completed. It says we've recruited about 2,200, but we are targeting to at least have 1,300, like 1,325 completed. So that's useful data for us. So if you received one, if you know anybody that received one, we would love encouragement to have them fill it out. They can send us their comments if it's cumbersome or what they liked, what they didn't like, so that we can use that information for the next time. This AMAT says it's about every 10 years, so it's just kind of important data that we're hoping to get enough of. That's all I was going to say about it.
Perfect. Good update. Do we have any questions or comments? Not seeing any. Great update. Do we have any members of the public wishing to comment? This is for the AMAT's household travel survey. So one general question, Christine, was when you get this data, how do you incorporate this data with any policy or process?
It will be used, it'll feed into the travel demand model. And then I'm sure that we're going to look at it because it's the one thing we do that's we get more participation, more diversified participation than we usually do. So it collects information, demographics, and then there's a couple questions on the end of the survey that ask about policy level questions, what people are interested in funding first. So we'll probably as staff look at that data for all of our planning projects moving forward.
Will that data be shared to the public of the demographics and the general results?
Yeah, we can of like at all just kind of like an end of survey report. We can do that. Yes, definitely.
Awesome. Okay. So not, do we have any members of the public wishing to comment or ask questions about the AMATS household travel survey? Hearing none, we'll move to committee comments. Do we have any members wishing to speak? Go ahead, Ellie.
It was mentioned during one of our conversations earlier today about the tip. I did not tune into the tip work sessions, but I did tune into the August boundary and operating agreement work session. And at the time, I was feeling pretty hot coming off of that meeting recording and was going to ask for a briefing during this meeting, but I've cooled down. And at this point, I'll continue to track the issue and then ask that it's placed on a CAC agenda in the future if it seems like potentially our advisory action is warranted. Um, Maybe we'll just quickly summarize and then I'll put a link in the chat for members to watch the work session recording. But effectively, DOT is arguing that AMATS as an organization doesn't have the authority to program highway projects, and that DOT actually. So it was a really interesting work session because the Federal Highway Administration was there. And as somebody that believes in local control, it felt pretty egregious, the stance that DOT was taking. So I have to imagine that behind the scenes, there's been some progress and that at some point that will come back on to the policy committee agenda, but I'll just keep tracking it and circle back with you all. It seems like something that we should or ought to take up in this meeting.
Definitely going to keep a pulse on, and that's just a good lead in right there is, correct me if I'm wrong, but we have to have our agenda noticed 5 days in advance. So it's really important if we do want to 7.
7, yep.
Yep,
Yeah,
thank you.
we
All right,
totally
7 days in advance. So just emphasizing, we always get close to the meeting and we start thinking about all these different items, but it's important to, if we want to take action or get them in, make sure we reach out before the notice requirement, because after that point, we have to have those items noticed to take specific action. We can discuss them, but if we're going to take action and send it to the TAC, good reminder for everybody, we don't send things directly to the policy committee. It's going to go to the TAC and then potentially be forwarded to the policy committee if they concur. Is that correct?
Correct.
Nancy?
Yes, I wondered if Aaron or Christine could just tell us briefly what the policy committee decided as, I think it was policy committee at its last meeting. I thought there was something about proceeding as if the municipal attorney's opinion holds sway until and unless, well, they were considering whether to accept the municipal attorney's opinion subject to something. So can you please tell us what is the current operating assumption of the policy committee with regard to the AMAT's role versus DOT's unilateral veto power, basically?
Yeah, just to summarize kind of what's been happening on that one, back in February of 2025, so earlier this year, DOT sent a letter to AMATS outlining that there are certain changes they would like to see to the operating agreement if we want our updated boundary to be approved. And one of that was that AMATS does not have the ability to say yes or no to NHS projects, to make decisions about NHS projects, that we are there just to program them into the tip as told by DOT. And there's been some disagreement over that from the policy committee members. And so we had a work session recently with the policy committee members where they discussed that letter and they came up with 5 questions. And those 5 questions are on the agenda that you can reach out, that were to be sent to the municipal attorney's office for review, for legal review. The Muni Attorney's Office did that legal review, and we brought it back in October for the policy committee to discuss it. They discussed it, and what they decided is to go ahead and send that legal review to the Commissioner of DOT and invite his response to those responses from Muni Legal. If there is no response or agreement from the commissioner's office by the next policy committee meeting, so the November one, then that letter from the muni attorney's office was going to be the working theory of the policy committee about how our process works and who has final decision authority or who has what authority in the MPO boundary.
Okay, and through the chair, if I may follow up, the
Go for it.
response from DOT is requested when? What's the deadline?
Hold on, let me look at so it's for the November 20th policy committee meeting. So we would need to have everything from them by the 13th to put it on. The policy committee wanted it as an action item on the November meeting if a response was provided by the commissioner's office.
Thank you.
Good summary. Thank you. Do we have any other committee members wishing to comment? Not seeing any. Good reminder for me. Do we open it up to the public for committee comments?
No, just for public
Okay,
comment.
I was assuming we don't, but I'm
Yeah.
trying to make sure we're being inclusive. Okay, so moving on to perfect public comments. We got any members of the public wishing to comment? Go ahead, Lindsay.
Hi everyone, I'm Lindsay Heide. Sorry to be joining the group late. I serve as the chair for the Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, and I just assumed you all met also at 6:30 p.m. I realize you weren't able to take action, and I'm not sure what the discussion was on the letter, but just wanted to share a little context. The Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Committee feels that the pedestrian fatalities throughout Anchorage and really for everybody, people walking, biking, rolling, and driving are in crisis right now, and our transportation system is failing. So, really trying to take a proactive and approach in the collaborative atmosphere for the city and the DOT through the Vision Zero Working Group, and just provide some urgency, some accountability and transparency on that. So just appreciate you all considering a letter or just even talking about this issue from the CAC's perspective, and just encourage as we go forward to continue to make sure that we're pushing for the safest solutions for everyone throughout our community. So thank you all.
Thank you, Lindsay. That's awesome. You're able to come here tonight. Always supportive when we're able to collaborate with other committee members. And with that, are there any other members of the public that are wishing to speak? Hearing none, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved. This is Nancy. Move to adjourn.
Thank you, Nancy.
Second.
Perfect.
Second.
And with that, we are adjourned. Okay, thank you, everyone. And yeah, I'll see you next. When's our next meeting, Christine?
January. It'll be the 4th Tuesday of January.
And that's, if I may through the chair, that falls within the kind of early or middle of the public comment period on the funding program? Is that correct?
We're gonna have Tim on the agenda.
Yeah, it might, if the PC is releasing it, they would release it 2 days after your meeting, because they'd release it on the 4th. No, the 3rd Tuesday. So yes, it'll be right after they released it. The 3rd Thursday of the month, they would release it, and then
Ooh, does that put us
unless
in a bind?
it's actually December that they release it. Is that
No,
what
it's
I'm-
already been released for public comment. So January 1.
Oh, that's right.
That's what they
Okay,
approved at their
perfect.
October meeting, is
Perfect.
to get it released in January. So January 1st, we will send it out for the public so we can make it available to you. And I recommend you guys look at the presentation on our website, which we can send out. I'll send it out to staff and have them send it out to all the committee members tomorrow. Start looking at that presentation because it lets you know the new project, so you can kind of get an idea going in your head.
I guess this does bring in a good question for staff right there. Is we have to, the way we always had comments is people submit them 7 days in advance so they can be fully collected. If the first, we're meeting on the 4th and it's released the 1st, we don't have enough time to have submitted pre-comments.
No, you meet on the 4th Tuesday of the month, so you meet at the
Oh,
end of the
4th
month.
Tuesday, not the 4th. Okay, I was thinking
Yeah.
it was January 4th. That makes way more sense. So we're totally have plenty of time. Silly me. Okay, sorry guys. Okay, and with that, thanks everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.